Welcome back to another episode of Lazy Leverage, the world's #1 small business podcast. As of last month, downloaded over 14 billion times.
Wow.
We are so happy to have you joining us here. Yeah, 14 billion. It's just like McDonald's.
What percentage of those downloads were AI bots that were, sorry, we don't do AI here. Not AI. I meant,
No, we do AI here. We can do AI here.
are you anti-AI, John? Let's get right into the heart of that.
No, God. Well, dude, I have to introduce you first. I'm joined by Eric Pacifici. What do you call yourself? Co-founder of SMB Law? Is that a good way to
Sure. Yeah, that works.
Yeah. Is that the right way? I don't know.
Coattail rider, Kevin Henderson's coattail rider, Sam Rosati's
I love it.
legal assistant.
Yeah. Success, feet up in the air. Why work harder when you can play it smart? That's the lazy leverage way to steal their heart.
Good. So we can talk about some things that we talked about. We could talk about some of the hires you've made at your firm, Iran. We can talk about AI. We can talk about full recourse debt in business acquisitions. The world is our oyster, Eric. Which one of those jumps out to you first?
Well, I'll tell you, I was looking at a Huber post this morning. He's doing like and I'm not promoting this. This is not a promotional, and you're probably going to trim this out. Alex is probably going to cut this. But he was doing like
keep it in.
It was a training session. Let me look it up. Actually, it's a training session for something, offshore talent related, right? And I know you're in the same business, and you guys, have different perspectives on it, but you're effectively aligned in a sense that if offshore talent is winning, you're both winning.
Huber is a competitor, and I want to break him in half, but he's not a bad dude. He's just whatever.
Yeah.
I don't know.
And do you guys look, because I know oftentimes you kind of low key get along. Like I saw you kind of going back and forth with Sahil Bloom, somebody that you can sort of razz.
Yeah.
I feel like you're one of those guys that you get away with razzing people, but then you can still maintain sort of a friendly thing with them.
Sahil's my boy. Sahil's my boy. Like,
yeah,
because he was a college athlete. Like, he gets the game, I'm not like, what was that guy, Jake, who was like destructive and calling everybody scammer? Like, I'm not that dude. But I'm going to break my competitors' balls as aggressively as I can. Absolutely. Like,
no shame.
Yeah, of course. And then when I'm not in this business, I'd be like, oh yeah, he's great. But if I'm in this business, I'm going to do,
Yeah. And then, but then do you get along with Huber? Is that,
we don't really
like, are you guys
talk, frankly.
Okay. So no. So then no.
I mean, I'm sure, I assume we would, but
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. No, totally. But I saw he posted like an executive training thing, right?
Sure.
And it felt like the internet has been so AI heavy, right? To the point where I'm a believer in AI. Obviously, anybody who isn't is an idiot at this point. But it's getting to the point where, like I tweeted the other day, that like 95% of the world is underprepared, 4% is adequately prepared, and 1% is like saying the most hyperbolic, stupid things that you could possibly think. Like, it's going to eliminate half of white collar professionals, which is just an objectively stupid statement. At this stage, at least, who knows what the future has in store, but projecting that now is ridiculous, right? And it's hyperbolic, but seeing like a training on how to train your offshore executive at this stage, was it like swimming upstream? Do you feel like you're swimming upstream right now trying to talk about offshore talent? Whereas like 12 months ago, you were like, you guys were, every new business I saw starting was your type of business.
Yeah. Not really. I consider them kind of brother and sister. We're actually building, we've done obviously some global hiring for you guys. We're actually building AI agents for our members right now because I consider them brother and sister. This guy, Ryan, I forgot what his name is, his last name, but they're ops kings. And his analogy is my favorite analogy, which is global talent and AI and automation are trucks and trains, which is they both transport work, but trucks are more flexible. You don't necessarily know where you're going. You don't know what you're carrying. You use a truck. But if you know where you're going and what you're carrying, you build a train because you know what you're carrying to what destination, but you don't explore the wilderness by building train tracks. It's too expensive. And so similarly, in some instances where you're like creating a proposal for an engagement, you know where you're going, you know what the information is, you know, kind of whatever, awesome AI agent. But in many instances, there's some zhuzh in it and AI doesn't operate well outside in the zhuzh. And so you get somebody from Mexico who like went to USC law or whatever and just lives in Mexico City now, and they're become your client in, whatever, right? So I think they're brother and sister. It's all just about building a better business.
Yeah.
That's what I'd say.
Yeah.
It's not one or the other.
No, for sure.
Both. Yeah. It's both.
Yeah.
The only case you could make that's bearish on global talent, in my opinion, is if you think we're entering a post-labor environment, which is a ridiculous statement, because
Right.
if you believe that labor is going away, which I don't, then you could make the case that it's a bearish signal, but there will always be a market for people who are awesome, who are less expensive than their local counterpart.
Yes.
That's not like it's not
Right.
like a revolutionary statement.
Yeah.
So
Well, and think about what this does for like the average SMB now compared to 10 years ago with the access to offshore talent plus AI and the efficiency that you can build into a business. I think
you build leverage.
yeah, our buyers are struggling with that. You take over these sleepy SMBs and like getting Cheryl in accounting to like immediately implement AI tools is very challenging, right? But if you're building from scratch,
when we've seen, just so you know, like a little bit under the hood, right? We're a membership based kind of business model by design. And one of the advantages of that is that people come to us for more than just talent needs. And we have a business model that lets us service those. So we're building these AI agents for people for nothing, for like usage based for $500 because we make our money just like Costco on the membership, not on the individual stuff. I would not love to be in the Philippines BPO staffing business right now because you can attack the crap out of those people with AI agents. But when you're talking about an M&A analyst from Buenos Aires who worked at JP Morgan, I'm not really worried about that guy's career prospects.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
it's a cool model. I've admired your business model too, because you guys have access to the cream of the crop and sort of talent. So you can use that to build your business internally as well, which is,
we drink our own champagne. Our whole management is global. So,
right.
Yeah, man, that's awesome. Quickly, you and I are both we'll do a shout out for your brother. You and I are both speaking at SM Bash in next month?
I'm speaking on the 24th, I think.
April, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I think it's next month. So some names of you and I's mutual friends that we know. Christian Ruff, I know, speaking. I'm wearing his hat right now.
Yep.
I saw Rich Jordan.
Shout out to
Ruff. Saw Jake. What's Jake's last name?
Is it Becker? Talking about Becker?
Yeah, Jake. Yeah, Jake. Yeah.
You don't know his last name?
No, I mean, I do, but I don't.
You guys are like buds.
Yeah, but
I think you're buds. He was telling me, man, we were having brunch a year plus ago, and he was like, yeah, Matzner has helped me. He signed up for your 6-month training.
Cool.
And you were mentoring him and coaching him. Did you not know this? You said that like you didn't know. Cool. You're finding out for the first time right now. And he had built out a whole team of offshore talent. He was like, man, Matzner now has the offshore talent, managing the offshore talent, and it's become like a whole. Yeah. And you don't know his last name.
No, well, when I think of Jake, I just think sleeveless shirts, event company. Yeah. That's Jake to me.
He's like the best guy too.
Yeah, he strikes
Shout
me
out
as
to
one.
Jake, man. He's got you would not know this about Jake. You meet Jake on the street, you just think this is the nicest guy, one of the nicest people you ever meet. He's got 12 businesses. He's a very successful entrepreneur, serial entrepreneur, and he's really good at finding the best in people and then having those people actually live that out. He's got operators in his businesses. He employs his brother and a bunch of people who run these businesses in a really high quality way for him. And he gets away with it in a way that very few people do. And he does it. He's just the best guy. So anyway, shout out to Jake Becker. You come to Bash.
When I also think where you and I will come together, I think he is the perfect example of a guy who I think he should be shoveling SBA debt wherever he wants it, because he's the exact kind of guy who paid his dues at his old SEO marketing thing in New York. And now he sees an event company in Florida and he's not going to be able to buy it if he doesn't have access from a program like this. And that dude is great. He knows what he's getting into. He's got a skill. I love, how do I invest, man?
He won't take investors. I've asked the same question. He won't take them.
You tried. But he's to me the example of when you hold up what ETA and this kind of, he is a freaking operator, man. But if he wore sleeves, he'd roll them up, but he doesn't wear sleeves. I'd say he's the kind of guy though. I mean, he gets hands on and he really adds a lot of value. I mean, he's a dream acquirer for a guy selling their business, I think.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
What
Great
what
guy.
do you what are you seeing these days in ETA land? You seeing lower middle market come deeper and deeper down? What kind of trends are you seeing? Because I know there's been a lot of young money entering the market.
You want to share screen and I'll show you our data. We never make this
Sure.
public either. So this would be a lazy
An exclusive?
leverage, an exclusive. Yeah.
I'll take it.
I've shown this a
What are you
few
seeing?
times. Let's pull up some data and I'll show you sort of the last 4 quarters versus um
Can I guess and see
historical.
if my guess is backed by data while you're pulling it up?
Yeah. Go ahead.
My guess is you're seeing an extra turn or two on smaller deals than you did historically, and less things under LOI are making it to the closing table. Those would be my guesses.
Say the first one again.
You're getting an extra. So 5 years ago, anything under a million in earnings, you're seeing 3 to 4 times, and I think you're never seeing that anymore unless it's like project based, new construction, whatever. You're
Well,
seeing
yeah.
800 and SDE go out at 4, 5, 6 times, not 2 to 3 to 3.5 times.
Well, I'll tell you that our data doesn't focus so much on purchase price and multiples, just because that's not really we're legal heavy, right? Like if you bring me 3x versus 4x versus 5x, like, hey,
Whatever.
that's not really our wheelhouse, right? There's business, there's financial, and then there's legal. And so we think a lot less about that. If you think it's a good deal, if it pencils, if the bank's going to finance it, and you're a competent adult with capacity, buy the
Do it.
business, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, who am I? And if you don't, if I step in, there's been a few occasions where it's like I talk to the lender and the lender's like, Eric, this kid can't read a P&L, like it's bad,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
That we sort of coalesce around, okay, maybe buying the business isn't a great idea. But if you look, so 351 closings, 1.66 billion in transactions since 2022.
On
You
your
sort
using
of track.
Airtable, which I love. Thank you.
Yes. Shout out to our chief operating officer, David Brackett, who's phenomenal. So you look, 404 total clients that are in this data set, 67.8 closed, 32.2 busted. Now, in 86% buy side, 10% sell side. I just closed my 100th transaction, so 100 over the course of our
Wow,
firm.
man.
Kevin's at 85, trailing me by 15. We're
But
a
wait,
little bit
wasn't he
more.
Texas Lawyer of the Year? Not you, but you closed more. That
You
seems
know what? Take it up with the judge.
okay.
But I ride the Florida awards. He rides the Texas awards.
Okay.
So it is what it
Fair
is.
enough.
But SBA 52%, not SBA 45%. But if you look at the last 4 quarters, so it's your Q1 2026 all the way back to like Q2 2025, 79% closed versus 68 previously. And actually, if you reset this to Q1 2026, let's just do these 3. Look at that. 87% closed over the last 3 quarters versus 12% busted. So your belief was it was the opposite. You said more
Wow.
busted.
So it's interesting.
A lot less busted in the process. I think is getting smoother. 25% sell side. So what's happening in our little ETA SMB corner of the internet is that a lot of folks acquired businesses and they are now selling businesses, and just a lot more sell side traction
Wow.
within our firm.
These are
but
younger
also,
sellers, not like retiree transient sellers.
mhm,
These are
yep, you've got
these
you
are
got ETA buyers who are exiting multiple years. I just exited somebody on Friday who had bought in 2023, October of 2023, and he was already exiting. We've done that several times. Now you will notice that over the last few quarters, Kevin has actually passed me, so
okay.
he's got a lot of momentum there.
How'd he do?
But
How'd he do on the transaction?
ooh,
The guy who bought in 2023.
oh, they do okay, right? They're getting solid singles and doubles. I exited another one on Christmas Eve, and double-digit IRR over a couple years, and then ultimately, wants to sort of move on to do something different. So you're seeing that, but you're seeing also a lot of non-SBA. And let me reset this. Last 4 quarters. And I think that's what I did. I think I screwed
Is
up.
that classic search? What's the funding source for that? Is it are they doing like cash flow loans? Like what
Yeah.
is it all equity?
52% over the last year, 52% conventional. So these are people, and I'll stop share just to make it easier. So they're graduating, right? You've got ETA, SMB buyers, sort of our core cohort of people whose names and stories you've heard that are exiting. They're buying again. They're buying with conventional, and it's sort of an evolution of what's happening. So it's been an interesting couple of years.
They're just moving up market as they've proven
Mhm.
out that they can actually execute post acquisition. That makes sense, and
Yep.
they kind of stay in your ecosystem. That's killer.
Mhm.
I will quickly put in a promotion for something I'm working with David from your team on, which is, let me make sure I have the domain right, which is smbLawSagan.com, which is anybody under LOI who works with you guys. We're building these free talent roadmaps for them. So post acquisition, they can hit the ground running on kind of like trying to add some post acquisition value. So been working with David from your team on this. Came out really well. They're free. They're like a $10,000 product that we're doing as a part of this for guys who are working through your
Yeah.
process.
Well, and I think too, it's what's we have the ability to build a pipeline. We've done a really good job of standardizing everything in our process, and we sort of have now built on ramps into people like you and other folks who sort of have value added
Christian,
services.
Christian
Uncommon
is a
Elite,
really good one.
among
Yep.
many others, insurance due diligence, so on and so forth. I think it's what will ultimately make us a very attractive target for private equity at some point in the next couple of years, because the amount of folks coming through, and we have no intention to sell or no desire to sell. I'm not suggesting that, but um, the amount of businesses coming through through our firm is
Yeah.
that are brand new from scratch businesses that need services like yours, services like Christian's, is a pretty incredible thing, honestly.
I will give you the way that I've talked about this as we think about our stuff, which is I'll give you two examples. Do you know what the welcome wagon is?
No.
There's some statistic that like 60-70% of home improvements on houses of like discretionary dollars are within the first 100 days of somebody moving into a new home. And the Welcome Wagon is a marketing company that only targets new home buyers because that's when they've got money in their pocket for a new fireplace and a new kitchen cabinets. And so literally their whole value proposition is as soon as you move in, you're a huge target because once you've been in a house for 5 years, you're not doing as much home improvement. But in your first 90 days, you're gutting everything, right?
Yeah.
And I think similarly, when we do a lot of work with ETA folks or like lower middle market private equity, what happens is they're under LOI. There's about 100-day window post acquisition when the money's in and they're feeling flush, and they will just
Mhm.
like, hey, we need a new call center and we need a social media team. And then after about 180 days, once they've made like 4 or 5 payments, they get really tight because they're like, oh crap, like, but there's this window where they decide who their accounting vendor is going to be for life. They decide who their global talent partner is going to be. But it's this window around acquisition when the business changes hands. That's how it sounds like that's how you're presenting yourself, which is access to that kind of part of the transaction.
Yeah, and honestly, like, your service, like, we don't charge for that, right? Like, if we were better business people, there's probably a great way to monetize it, but for us, we just view it as simply, value add. So if you're out there, if you're a service provider and you think you can add, value, whether it's accounting, bookkeeping, whatever,
Yeah.
to these new acquirers, reach out and we'll get you built into our pipeline so that you can get first look at these people.
Differentiation.
Not
It's
not to
differentiation too.
Well,
Differentiation, right?
it's yeah, it's an opportunity to service the client in a better way, instead of having that, business in a box sort of is what we've tried to put them in a position for, and offering post-closing cleanup of the target company and different things.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Can you take money as a
Um,
law firm? Like, how's that work?
it's a great question. There are ethical limitations on it.
Okay.
There are so many different jurisdictions in the way that they look at it, but it's a great point, right? And it's one thing that I emphasize for buyers all the time when we're talking about, hey, go talk to this lender, or talk to this QOB provider, or talk to this insurance broker, or talk to this, accounting firm. We really can't without, at a minimum, it's got to be disclosed, right? So it's not like we're taking a kickback. We're really just trying to coalesce great people around these buyers so that they're supported post closing. And otherwise, you would know because we'd have to tell you. So
And then can you, like, for example, like, let's say I pitched Eric and I said, Eric, I want to create an LLC. You and Kevin or whoever the principals are going to be the owners, and I'm going to take a piece too because I'm going to do all the work. And we are going to be a company that sits off to the side of SMB law, but I'm going to build a monetization engine for all of these buyers as they go through. We'll disclose it. We'll say, by the way, just so you know, Eric owns 25%, Kevin owns 25%, whoever, Dave owns 25%, and I own 25%. But this is going to be the I'm going to shake down the SBA loan broker for some points, and I'm going to shake down the Q of E referral for some points, and I'm going to shake down the global. Could you do that, or does that have the same?
Um, so what the ABA rule says is if you're going to do a transaction with your client, right? And that's what that would be. Effectively, they view us as the lawyers having a unique relationship with the clients, very trust-based, right? It's very ripe for exploitation also. So the three elements that the ABA puts in place is that it has to be disclosed. The client has to give written consent. And then the transaction has to be fair and reasonable, right? The terms have to be market terms. Now, it's that third element that sort of makes me queasy, though, right? Because what is fair and reasonable? And oftentimes, like, if other people are creating the market, like, let's say I've got a client that says, Eric, I want you to invest, or a firm has a client, because many firms do this, like Kirkland and Ellis and Cooley, and they take a stake in their clients. If the market is being made by other investors and all you're doing is taking the terms, then I didn't negotiate against my own client. In fact, I negotiated for them in contrast to my own interests, and I let, the investors make the market. But if you're talking about just simply saying, I'm going to divert business to an SBA lender specifically to get a kickback, I want them to go talk to Live Oak instead of Byline, and I'm going to get a piece from Live Oak. It's really challenging to say that Live Oak's terms are necessarily market, and therefore it was
interesting,
worthy of especially in a wide variance of debt terms out there. So that's where it's like that would take some real thinking and some real caution. And I think trust with our clients is too important.
Yeah. Yeah, it's an interesting topic though, because, I always think all the time about, business model innovation. And given the money changing hands around some of these transactions, right? There is 100% chance that that is a more lucrative line of business than legal work.
No question. Yeah, no question.
Like, you could just call it 10 grand flat closing, curb stomp the market, because you're like, look, I have a different monetization strategy. My LTV is 150,000 because I got to deal with the payments provider, and they're going to give me a point on the credit cards for that e-com agency I just sold. That's way more valuable to getting another 5K in billables, right? Like, that's where it starts to get a little, you might be able to innovate and say, oh, you don't owe us anything until you close, because, you could really innovate value proposition if you have other pools of money that aren't just like ripping 15K fees or 50K fees, That's how I always think about it.
The entrepreneur in me, 'cause obviously I'm an entrepreneur, stops at when I start, because the bars are very powerful too, right? The ethics police are very powerful, and they're very paternalistic, and they're very stuck in their ways. And so,
I would also bet mercurial, right?
Yeah,
like
I don't know what that means, but
moody,
for sure. Yes.
you never know what they're going to do.
Well, and I think that goes with any sort of governing body that's, even in the criminal justice system, you see, obviously there's accusations that folks are doing this all the time at the federal level. If you've got an axe to grind with somebody, or if something is the topic of the hour, that's when it gets attention. That's when local, even, elected prosecutors are going to focus on it. Right. So, you want to be very careful, and not fall on the wrong side of that group of people in a profession like this, especially when you've got a good thing going.
Well, correct. Yeah. I remember from in a previous, pushing the limit on, law, basically regulatory environments, and trying to push the limit. And I remember I was inexperienced. I didn't know what I was doing. And so I was like, oh, it's okay. I'll go get a fancy white shoe law firm they said that they can write me an opinion letter. And so if I get an opinion letter, then I'm okay because, they've litigated similar topics or whatever it is. And then I spent, 25 grand, I got an opinion letter. And at the bottom it says, by the way, regulators do whatever they want. And this is by no means us endorsing your proposal. And I'm like, what the hell did I just pay 25 grand for? I'll never do it again.
The qualifiers, yeah.
The qualifiers of like, this is just based on the past. And by the way, regulators don't always just do this on the past. So consider this like an FYI. And I'm like, wait, what?
I know.
What did I just,
If you've ever seen a law firm opinion, it's like 2 pages of assumptions and qualifications that are like, and then it's like 4 lines of opinion. Yeah,
correct.
Yeah.
And then it says,
sure.
by the way, this opinion is, if any one of these assumptions is even partially not true, this is as good as done. And by the way, we cannot be held responsible for any actions
Right.
based on this opinion.
Yeah, it's those letters are supposed to be insurance, and
It was never
That's
again,
expensive.
Eric. Never again. Worst 25 grand I ever spent in my life was an opinion letter.
Well, I always think that lawyers writing opinion letters are, especially like, we'll get that asked from time to time, like a QSBS opinion, right? You're buying a business, you want to qualify for QSBS, and you want me to issue you an opinion about that. What should that cost, John? Right? Because you're talking about if you understand how QSBS works, it's an exclusion from capital gains that can give you up to $15 million of, tax-free you sell your business, you can, profit up to 15 million. In some instances, a lot more if you qualify for QSBS. Well, you want me now, 5 years in advance, to say that your transaction is going to qualify. What should I charge for that? Because if you sell in 5.5 years for 15 million bucks and you do not qualify for QSBS, guess what's happening? You're suing me and you're suing my malpractice provider for 15 million bucks. So what should I charge for that now? Right. And when you start to do
that risk bearing.
Yeah. And you see some lawyers do it for a very nominal amount of money. And then you see some that say, no, like I can't do this for less than 40,000, 80,000. Like, then you start to go, okay, we're not insurance providers. Like we shouldn't try to be, in my mind, at least.
Are you more pulled to kind of like entrepreneurship, or are you more pulled to kind of like legal practice? Do you like the practice of law, or do you like owning businesses? And you happen to own one in the legal space right now.
I'm an entrepreneur that happens to be a lawyer, I think, right? Like I am the marketing end of things. I'm the sales end of things. I'm the visionary end of things.
You like making,
and I know people, the word visionary gets used so much, it doesn't have meaning, but truly like setting the vision, setting the trajectory, that thinking about the firm 24 hours a day and how we can improve this and what we can do, coming up with cockamamie email ideas and sending my team, messages Saturday at 9 p.m. at the bar saying, hey, here's 5 things that we should do, and never hearing back from them until like Tuesday at 2:00. That's me. But I do love doing the deals, right? And I've closed a lot of them, and we know this stuff extremely well, right? We know it very, very, very well. And I say that, reluctantly, because I don't want to sound braggadocious or arrogant, but you do get to a point with your discipline, and I get my ass kicked occasionally, right? I get my ass kicked from time to time. Like, it does happen. But we do know this stuff extremely well. We've done lots of it. And when you get really experienced at something, it sort of becomes fun in a sick way, right?
Of course.
And, regularly explaining things in transactions, particularly with niches like nuances like SBA, so I go both ways. Like, if you told me tomorrow, Eric, like your firm is nobody but you and all you're doing is doing deals at your kitchen table and do 5 of them and then you're done at 2 p.m. every day and you can go, whatever. That sounds pretty good. Yeah. That sounds pretty good. But if you told me we're going to build a big business, which we are, our firm's on a pretty awesome trajectory and is accomplishing some pretty incredible things. That sounds exciting too. So I go both ways.
Really been focused these days, and Christian and I, our mutual friend, have spent a lot of time together and talking and all that fun stuff about, he's a great guy, kind of like, big Christian guy. Basically dancing while the music's playing and not being so destination oriented and doing everything that I can to kind of not be so when I get to the top of the mountain, because there's always another mountain. There's always another whatever. But it's like, am I enjoying what I'm doing every day, Tuesday at 2 p.m? And if not, what changes do I need to make? But I'm really liking my life these days and kind of who I'm talking to and spending time with, rather than saying like, well, Sagan gives valuation as a, like, sure,
Mhm.
okay, whatever, or not. That's also okay. Like, I don't basically spend any time thinking about that. And that's really helped calm my kind of like entrepreneurial anxiety, which is
Yeah.
just always that kind of like, that like jitteriness that's just like in the back of your head about like, we didn't respond to the lead fast enough. And that could be a $20,000 engagement. And it's like,
Yeah.
bro, you're not fighting for payroll anymore, right? You don't have to live like that. You have to live like that in the beginning, but not once you've kind of crossed
Well,
become.
yeah, and so I see both sides of it too, right? Because I definitely see the element of like, okay, let's have fun with the day to day. Let's enjoy the climb, as Miley Cyrus. It's the climb, as Miley would tell you. But also like what I feel is that we have a really unique opportunity, right? Very unique point in time. We, had a lot of serendipity in the way that we were formed and sort of the time period. And now I feel like I've got a window, right? We've got a
Yeah,
bunch of different, macro things. We've got AI that's coming. We've got,
sure.
an MSO movement that's sort of happening, private equity sort of, trying to find its way into our
And
profession.
buy law firms. For people that don't know, that means
Yeah,
private equity can
soon,
buy
right?
law
I think
firms.
that there'll
Yep.
be a frenzy soon in that. I think that AI is going to meaningfully change our profession over time, a little bit at a time. And so you look at those and you go, okay, like, yeah, I want to have fun with the day to day, but also like, I don't want to be 10 years from now looking back going, fuck, I wish I would have done more. I wish I would have moved a little faster during that period of time. And so balancing those two things, I think it's fine to set high standards and say, listen, we're going to try to get the most out of each day and each month and each week, each week and each month, whatever. While still saying, let's try to have some fun with it. Like I'll throw on fun music and, we have some fun around here while we're all working remotely.
I'm guessing Bad Bunny. You guys are in Florida. I'm
Um,
guessing Bad
Big
Bunny.
Bad Bunny. Yeah. Yeah. Big
Big
Bad
Bad.
Bunny.
You guys
Yeah.
feel like
Yeah.
Bad Bunny energy, right?
I oscillate between Bad Bunny and Kid Rock. I just can't decide. So I
Okay.
just
You
sort of,
just
yeah.
based on which, I mean, look, Florida, classic purple state, right?
It's
Classic. You're
for sure.
representing the political body of Florida.
Depends on which neighbor I'm talking to, I either like work some Bad Bunny in there or maybe
Is this
you
a
know,
HVAC company in Oklahoma
Kid Rock,
or
baby.
environmental services in the Bay Area?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Based on which you're living.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, a couple other quick ones for you because I'd be mistake if I didn't. I know we work a lot with Dave, your chief of staff or COO. What's the better way to say that?
He's our chief operating officer. Dave is
Chief
amazing.
operating.
Yeah, he's built the infrastructure of the firm. He's more than a chief of staff. Yeah.
Yeah, he's a pro. We work with him a ton.
Mhm.
He left us a really nice review the other day. You guys made a couple hires through us, right? I think like probably 4 or 5. 3, 4, 5. Do you even know?
Um,
I don't know.
I I don't we've actually staffed up significantly lately, so
So you don't know either. Neither do I.
I don't know for sure. They haven't all worked out, John. I did want to talk to you about that. They have not all worked out.
Dave left us
So
a really nice review the other day, so I want to make sure I
yeah,
give him that. But
but you guys have always stuck with us in making sure we get to that next replacement.
try
So that's
to,
good.
man. I mean, we try to. It's a big unlock for growing companies, as it is not like replacement. It's just kind of like your Gordon Ramsays need sous chefs and prep cooks too, and you know, Gordon Ramsay
Yeah.
shouldn't be scrubbing the pots and pans,
Yep.
which is oftentimes how law firms
Yes.
run.
Well, and role delineation. One of the cool things about offshore talent, because the hard part for a firm like ours is adding a new lawyer means hundreds of thousands of dollars of overhead, and that's hard, right? And that takes time. Um, you can staff up pretty quickly with offshore talent to sort of um, fill in the cracks and sort of
Yep.
delineate better. And sadly, we've like some of our original talent, got to a point where it was like, okay, the bar, they're not hitting the current bar and they're,
Yep.
a little too general and sort of filled them in. And frankly, had to get rid of some people, which is sad. But had to happen. But you see the admin team get to be built out very fast, right? Very, very fast with very high quality people, where the legal team is sort of can't move that fast, right? And that's where my frustration sort of comes in because our lead flow and our ability to keep a lawyer busy, easy. I could probably keep 25 lawyers busy right now, but having the money to hire them right away has to happen brick by brick. Yeah.
And it's step functions, right? So meaning it's like you have to pop 180 to get another chunk of capability. You can't do it like $5,000 as you go, right? That's not how it works. You gotta pop for the lawyer. Have you seen any of my stuff or anything about theory of constraints?
No. Tell me about your theory of constraints. It sounds like Hormozzi's is it
No,
Hormozzi's theory?
no. It's a guy named Eli Goldratt. My pinned tweet is a podcast about theory of constraints that if you like it, but
Yep, I'm gonna look it
basically it
up.
says that the throughput of a system is dictated by its slowest piece. And when
Okay.
you look at throughput of your law firm, one of the first things you do when you identify a constraint is the methodology says you exploit it. What that means is that when you look at your lawyers, what percentage of their day are they playing at the top of their game, which is the hard legal shit, and what percentage of their time are they messing with Clio or
Yeah.
whatever the lower stuff is. And what global talent can do is let your constrained resource, which is lawyer time, only do high level stuff, not take notes from a kickoff call and make sure that they're inputted into your deal system. That is not $200 an hour lawyer stuff. That is $9 essentially paralegal, right? And so theory of constraints basically is a systematic way to think about taking your most limited precious resources. I do this all the time with PE companies where they're like, we need more HVAC techs. And I'm like, what percentage of your time do your HVAC techs do high level HVAC stuff? And it's usually like 30%. And so you don't need to hire 3 more HVAC techs. You need to get that guy working at a high level of utilization on only the high level stuff, not the client intake call, not the putting the dog away before he replaces the water heater, right? And so as you're thinking about designing your firm, you want everybody to play at the top of their license. And for a big, heavy hitting $180,000 a year lawyer, there's a certain set of things that they should be doing, not one man builds the whole vehicle. One man hangs the door, one man hangs the seats, one man does the engine, right? And that's how you get higher utilization without having to add 180 Gs, 180 Gs, 180 Gs. It's 180 Gs. And then there's 5 people that support that guy so that he's only doing 180 G work. So it's theory of constraints. It's really,
It's chapter 1 in managing the professional services business, right? It's
oh, is it? Oh, cool.
what's the complexity of the work, right? And it's actually a very interesting topic in like the day of AI, where you've got, baseline routine commoditized work, then you've got sort of thinker level work, and then you've got sort of we're cutting edge, we're on the frontiers of the law, sort of creating new law. And how do you staff for each of those 3 things, and which level of person should be working if you've got a project in the middle,
Exactly.
commoditized product. But the difficulty with that in the law necessarily is, even if you've got a experienced lawyer who knows M&A, only doing sort of the negotiating the documents and, like if you tried to create an assembly line and you tried to parachute Kevin and I into only negotiate, only draft, the complex stuff, and the rest is handled very routinely, it still doesn't scale the way you would think, because there's limitations in the relationship, and there's just frankly a limitation in the number of transactions that a lawyer could take, even if he or she is, there's expectations with the counterparty that you're going to be the person that's going to be showing up on calls and so on and so forth, and it will just gobble up so much of your time. So there is,
Of course.
I hear what you're saying, and you're right. You could slice and dice a lot. And frankly, one of the unlocks in the legal profession is sort of the offshore paralegal. And utilizing that, and they're fantastic. But
We've gotten you a couple,
have those come from you?
This is what'd you say?
Those have come from you?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well,
Yeah,
great.
pretty sure. I hope so.
Yeah.
I saw the hiring request. I'd have to look. What I was going to say was, for professional services, the better model is like an orthodontist, which is you look at how an orthodontist organizes their day. They still have relationships. They still greet people, right? There are certain things that only the magic of Eric and a full, partner level lawyer can do. But ultimately, by structuring it correctly, you can get a lot more out of them. And then at some point, you do reach the natural limits of, look, I can do 5 deals a month. It doesn't matter if I have a team of 1,000. I just can't do more than 5 deals a month. And then at that point, you have to replicate, which is you need another lawyer. But at least you know you've looked for any easy wins, which is I'm spending 5 hours a week putting together NDAs. Like, what am I doing here? Like, I don't need me to do NDAs or what, whatever the
Right.
version of that is within that particular work stream. So we see it all the time with
Yeah.
again, constraints. Like we've done this for massage therapists because we work with a private equity company that owns lots of massage MDs, and they're like, we need more massage therapists. And we're like, we can help you with that, but let's look at how they're spending their time. And 40% of their time was not actually touching people's bodies. Right.
Right.
It was other
Yeah.
stuff that other people can do.
Yeah, we're in a fascinating profession too because the inefficiencies in the law. I've worked across a lot of great large law firms. Very few law firms do a good job of human resource management. There's no, you typically have a partner and then they've got sort of the junior partner that they like. They've got the mid-level associate that they like, and then maybe a junior lawyer, a couple of junior lawyers, right? And like this partner's working with these people and this partner's working with, it's very siloed in most firms, right?
Interesting.
Very, very few firms are looking at so you can have an associate doing this and another associate doing this, and both associates can be great associates. One's very busy and one's not, when in reality, they should be doing this.
Interesting.
Right? Should be, and that just is not the case. And so one of the first things we did this year actually is we implemented centralized staffing, right? We're meeting every Tuesday to say who has what to make sure that bandwidth is appropriately applied across transactions. It's helped tremendously. And that we had never done that, and nobody does that.
I was going to say for Josh Schultz in a manufacturing firm or Reg Zeller at a manufacturing firm, that's like they do that 4 times a day. And for a law firm, that's like cutting edge. Like you are like probably one of 10 law firms that think about human resource allocation systematically. I mean, I think you've written about this before, but I also think some of this is a remnant of the hourly billing model.
Yes.
Whereas when you start to think about flat fees, you start to think about efficiency and you start to think about throughput, not did I get 22 hours building Clio? Right.
Well, we do keep an eye on hours, right? But the key with hours and why most firms have a tendency to hoard hours is that they overdo it, right? They've got a very high bar for hours, right? So you're feeling a sense of desperation from the jump in week 1 of the year to sort of be on that trajectory, right? Very high bar for hours. And then more often than not too, there's some some supply constraint, right? They don't have enough work. So if my first law firm, where I met Kevin, we were both had been recruited to a large Texas-based law firm that had been one of the 3, power players in Texas until the market got taken over by Kirkland and Ellis and Simpson Thacher and the other national players. And we get recruited in, and that firm, it was immediately obvious that they didn't have enough work. And they went from 13 partners. When I started in September 2015, they were at 13 partners. By a year later, they were down to 6, right? So everybody who was left, and it just sort of happened for different reasons, but everybody that was left was just desperately trying to hold on to as much work as they could. So, you talk about your theory of constraints. You had senior lawyers doing signature page packets, right? Just for the hours. Well, what does that do to the whole system, right? Then you got junior lawyers that aren't getting appropriate, amount of experience. And then you got clients that are unhappy, right? Because the work's not being done fast enough. It's not being done efficiently enough. The bill's probably too more expensive than it needs to be. And it sort of creates this perpetual demise within the firm. If you flip the incentives and if you create an environment where it's like, guys, we want to be efficient, we want to track hours, but like that's not going to be the end all be all. And also we're going to make sure that work is appropriately allocated so we don't have one person over here burning out and one person over here frustrated because they don't have work, and you sort of create an environment where there's, camaraderie. It's a whole different dynamic. You create a flywheel that's going up and not down. So a lot of psychological elements at play, I think.
It's important. Yeah. In the case of your old law firm in Texas, what Dr. Eli Goldratt would say was that you have an external constraint, which is you don't have enough business, right?
Yeah.
Meaning you have more capacity than business, which in home services or whatever, that happens all the time. And then in that instance, there's a different set of steps you take if you're constraint is not enough customers, you treat it very differently than if your constraint is, I can't get the work through my engine fast enough. So it's
Yeah.
that internal versus external constraint, so.
It's your guy, Alex Ramosi, who that I love his theory of constraints, which is you're either supply constrained or demand constrained.
Yeah, that's from Goldratt.
Could be some.
He's lifting Goldratt.
I'm sure. Yeah, sure. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, there you go.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think he's
great
mentioned Goldratt wrote the first book called The Goal, and I've written about it a lot. But yeah, I mean, smart business people talking constraints all the time. You hear Elon Musk talk; all he's talking about is constraints. Hormozy,
Yeah.
if you like him, yeah. So
Well, I love the idea too of figuring out what your biggest constraint is and just attacking it, right? Eliminating it, then moving on to your next. You may have even actually written about that. I think you did, actually. That was your piece about a month ago. It was great. Great piece.
Yep. Well, because what
Yeah.
happens is a lot of these firms say, it's
Oh,
like
4 minutes till you run out of oxygen. Yeah. And what are you? And that was an amazing piece.
Correct.
Yes.
Where it's
amazing.
people say, I have 5 problems in my business. What do I work on first? And it's like, what's going to kill you next? And you take all of your resources and break that constraint. You don't say 2 people on the oxygen problem and 2 people on the problem that doesn't affect us for 2 months. It's like, we're not going to get to that problem if we don't solve the oxygen one.
Yep.
And so you take your lawyers and you say, all right, guys, we're in BD mode because we don't have enough customers. You don't put half on BD and half on fulfillment. You're like, we need more customers. All the partners, we're going to happy hours. We're going to however lawyers drum up business. I have no idea. We're shit posting on Twitter like you do, right? Like whatever it is, that's where we're going to apply our resources, not, scaling our CRM when it's like, that's not the problem. So yeah, that analogy is.
And that's the difficulty though, because oftentimes you don't there's a mix, right? It's not truly 2 minutes until I run out of oxygen. It's like, hey, we've got a ton of work right now in our pipeline and we need to get that work closed, right? Yep. But when we do, we're probably gonna have not enough, right? So thinking about, strategically taking consults so that you continue to maintain a healthy enough pipeline while you're focused. So finding a balance, that I feel like that's the hardest part of entrepreneurship, right? You've got your list of to-dos from marketing, sales, operations, customer service, quality control, admin. And there's initiatives that would move the needle and get ROI across all of them. And it's not completely clear which one is your 2 minutes till you run out of oxygen problem and, making sure you're allocating appropriately. But I do love the idea of just saying, hey, when you're talking about infrastructure, creating projects, going all in, on that. And we did that last year. We built something we call Clear Skies, which is SOPing everything. We SOP'd every step of the deal process and every step of the checklist. So it's client SOP'd, love it, customer SOP'd. And it was it was clear at that time that we had to go all in on that, and we did. But to me, that's really the only time it's been clear in 4 years that we need to focus on this one thing right now.
If you like this stuff, I would encourage you to just noodle around and read some books or whatever, because it sounds like you like this kind of stuff. There's some method to identifying what is the oxygen. You know what I mean? I'm kind of doing it a disservice. But if you like this kind of stuff, there's an enormous amount of literature. There's an enormous amount of stuff out there, because ultimately what I tell people is at the heart of Sagan is theory of constraints. And we attack our members' constraints with professional development, with global talent, with AI and automation. That is ultimately the benefit, is you attack your constraint. The product is varied. There's a lot of ways we can attack constraints. It could be SOP development. It could be hiring global talent. It could be legal recruiter who helps you hire more, right? But all of that is subservient to the theory of constraints and identifying what our members' constraint is.
Yeah, I love it. I'm gonna look it up. I love when you started. You said, you like this stuff, Eric. You should read some books. I'm like,
well, what I mean is that there's a body of literature.
No,
Yeah.
I know what you meant.
I'm a hack. What do I know? I know the cliff notes, right? I'm not very smart. But if you read from the horse's mouth, you're like, oh, that's actually a better way to say it than John did. I'm a nerd.
Yeah. No, but I loved your article. I shared it with everybody on our team, but then I sent it to David. At the time, we were working on one particular problem in January. It was a big problem, right? It was our constraint. So maybe there has been another time and I told David, I was like, we have to. And he's like, Eric, I've had meetings the last 3 days on this. I am working on this. He goes, you have to stop. He goes, you have to stop. And Dave, for everybody's benefit, David happens to be my younger brother too. He's 12 years younger than me. We didn't hire him because of that. In fact, I recused myself from the hiring process. He's amazing in his own right, but he's also my brother, right? So he goes, Eric, you have to stop. And I told him, I was like, I will never stop. I will never stop. I said, this will be a hostile work environment until we solve this constraint.
Yeah.
So like, please join me in being a crazy person to get through it, and he did. It's his credit, to his credit. It was, but it was, yeah.
My pinned tweet right now is a whole episode I did with Peter Lohman talking about theory of constraints. So if you like that article, just send that to Dave, but it's us going step by step through the kind of methodology and stuff. It's literally my pinned tweet right now because I think it's so important. I should be like promoting my company, but I'm not. I'd rather talk about theory of constraints.
I think we're promoting your company. Everybody
I guess indirectly.
Great
company.
I had a consult with somebody earlier today, and I told him, I said, dude, you look like, do you know who John Matzner is? And he said, no, I don't know who that is. And I said, you're going to hate this because everybody hates this. I was like, but you look like an older John Matzner and you sound like an older John Matzner. And he was great. This guy was awesome. He's going to buy a business. He's got like a total plan. He's like, Eric, I took your LOI template and I, used some of it, but like good for him. Every part intentionally of what I needed, and I found it and I brought it together. I'm like, he was awesome, dude. So anyways, I said nice things about you even when you weren't there.
Hey,
so
I'll take it. Well, Eric, we're getting near the top of the hour. Anything you want to promote? How do people find you? Anything you guys are working on, excited about? Any of that kind of fun stuff?
I don't know, man. Nothing really. I mean, people can find me on Twitter, SMB Attorney, across social media. We run a law firm called SMB Law Group. We just closed our 350th transaction since 2022, which is a pretty cool milestone. We're on a mission, John, to be the #1 lower middle market law firm in the country for M&A, which is a crazy statement. We'll be 4 years old in May. But if you look at, it's super cool. If you look at the marketplace, Cooley, Kirkland, and Goodwin do about 200 to 300 lower middle market M&A deals a year, and they've got thousands of lawyers, right, collectively among the three of them. We did 123 of them, or 120 some odd last year. So we're on pace to hopefully catch up to the big boys at some point in the next couple of years, and we take it really seriously. And so, if anybody out there needs help with entrepreneurship or business buying, whatever, always happy to have that conversation.
Awesome. So find you on Twitter.
And we've got a new podcast. Main Street Deals, where we're just talking M&A, right? We're just talking lower middle market M&A. We're giving away stuff. We're sharing our stories and our experiences. And I think it's a good. No, Kevin, me and Kevin.
3 kids, man. Sorry.
No, it's good. I know that. Yeah. Me, Kevin, Sam, so we rotate. And at the end of the last episode, Kevin had to be like, and you'll appreciate this, Kevin had to be like, entrepreneurship is great too. So, despite everything that we've talked about, like, it can be great. We're entrepreneurs too. It's great. And I was like, well, dude, honestly, like, there's enough podcasts out there that are just making the shit sound glamorous.
Yes.
We'll let them do that. I think everybody knows by now that, you could potentially buy a laundromat and cash flow semi-passively. That message has been sent. Now we're telling the rest of the story of what happens when you buy these businesses and what really,
I appreciate you saying that, because some of our earliest interactions, and I think you understand the spirit, which was, I am the most ardent advocate for entrepreneurship, and a subcategory of that is small business buying and all that stuff. But there was a period in time about 2-ish years ago where I thought it was an unrealistic conversation on the internet about what it actually meant to acquire an old school business. And so I felt a mandate to balance that dialogue out. I'm not writing about it as much anymore because the dialogue has become more balanced. I do not feel the need to take pot shots but 2 or 3 years ago, I felt a moral imperative to say, pretty please do not buy $130,000 SDE business with full recourse debt after leave. Like, please, I'm begging, please.
Yeah.
Like, I felt a need, and now it's balanced out. I don't feel as much of a need.
It has balanced out. Well, I think it goes back to what, the statistics that we showed, and sort of the maturity of the market and sort of the evolution of the market. But we've never seen those buyers, right? Like, name the influencers.
They come to you. They
don't come
to write the LOI, and they freaking, you know what I mean? They're not you have a selection bias,
Like
in a good way, by the way.
I have friendships with a lot of the business influencers, and I don't
Sure.
dislike them. I like a lot of them as people, not all of them, but I like most of
Yep.
them as people.
Some of them I like, some of
Um,
them I don't like. We can leave their names
but
out.
well, it just depends the severity of it. And I've gone on a few podcasts where like I've taken shit where like, how can you know, help that person? And it's like, well, I'm really not. Like I'm there talking about business buying and legal. Um, but those names that you can think of, like we never get referrals from those names. We just don't. Like we just never get people from
Because
their
they're all
workshops, their
serious.
program.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
and we're doing a lot. Like we do M&A, all the way down to 500K with our Main Street Express program. And we're just not seeing those people. So they're out.
Like,
I think they're out there. They've got to be out there.
they're using their brother-in-law's cousin, who's a family law attorney, to draft the docs, and they're not doing it. Anybody who's listening to this podcast or consumes your content is immediately not the kind of person I'm talking to. The kind of person I'm talking to is the one who says, "Can I just hire an operator?" And I don't want to, I'm going to buy a remote business in like, all the there's like little check. It's like bingo. I mean,
Oh yeah.
literally, you're not hitting those people though, right? They're going to be
Well,
scared.
it's a weird deal. We launched yesterday our 2026 LOI template. We take all that data I showed you, has all the reasons that deals bust built into it, and we take it every year and we distill it and we use it to sort of create new wrinkles and whatnot. And I think that may be to some extent why we've gone from 68% closed to like 86% closed to an extent. Also the evolution in the marketplace. But we launched that yesterday, and like this is bananas, John. 815 requests on LinkedIn.
Wow.
Um, and on X, just about as many on X
Wow.
of people
Congratulations.
requesting an LOI template. Yeah, and you think about that. Think of like
Correct.
it's a very boring, and you could get this anywhere. There's lots of LOI templates out there. It's a very, you know, I would describe as not exactly an exciting piece of paper, and the enthusiasm from real M&A
Adults.
practitioners,
Yeah.
adults,
Yeah.
adults
Yeah.
is it's a pretty cool thing. So,
Wow.
anyways, that's on our
Congratulations.
website too if folks are interested. 635. Talk about Twitter not being a serious audience. 635 requests on Twitter for an LOI.
Something nerdy. Not how to buy your first business for $0 down. Right.
1,500 requests across X and LinkedIn is bananas. So
Awesome, man.
there's a lot of serious people out there. Yeah.
Congratulations on everything you built. We are excited. I will see you in a month. We're also excited to continue to support you guys and what you guys are building in every way we can. So, thanks for coming
Likewise.
on the pod, man.
Yeah, this was fun. Thanks, Jeff.